Last time in the Medewi campaign we started our war with the Selucids. We lost Salamis to them, then we took down one of their satrapies, Nabata, replacing them with a new allied state, and we took from them two regions, Hegra and Petra, bringing our forces up to a relatively defensible position between our empire and theirs. They took Tyros from us, we went to take it back, which went without a hitch until it finally drew enough attention from the Seleucids to just send loads of armies at us, which they could have done at any time, and now we've got a decisive battle on our hands. We start off with our men in position to try and surround the enemy as they come into Tyros. I've got a couple of approaches just barricaded off with a few units guarding them, but most of my army is focusing on this kill zone here towards where the enemy's deployed. We've got all of our traps set up around this building, and on top of the building are archers. This is one of Rome 2's little secrets. There's one type of building in the game which can be garrisoned with units, like in past games. I guess they gave up on that mechanic after making that one building, but we'll try and use it for this fight. So we plan to draw the enemy into fight in that area so they can be shot from behind and above by those archers. Meanwhile, Arrakkamani is just taking units outside, so we'll have some versatility. Once the enemy come in, we might be able to go in behind them and do some work. Their first wave is going to be their worst troops, so that's nice of them to start us off easy. Lots of levied hoplites coming in with the first army, so since they'll have low morale, we can hope to surround them and take them down. Once enough of them have gone in, I was able to come in and attack their archers because they were following more slowly behind and were exposed. So we'll kill some of them. Unfortunately, other archers who were just standing around over here will then start firing at us. So the fact they didn't commit all of their first army to the assault is going to help them out quite a bit there. Now in comes everything else that the Seleucids have brought, and there's a lot of it. They've got Hypaspitae coming in. These are the top level hoplites. They've got tons of phalangites, pikemen, the famous unit of the successor states, and some regular phalanx hoplites as well, all of which are heavily armoured and well trained. And one such unit, these pikes, is now fighting with the first of the units I'd prepared to lock the enemy down, and they're having an okay time. You can see I'm struggling to get around behind them here because the unit that was meant to go around got somewhat caught on the edge of the unit, and now when I'm trying to force them to actually get around behind them, the guys who are caught on the edge are trying to run through the enemy because pathfinding only works on a unit by unit basis rather than for the individual soldiers, so they basically get killed and the rest of their unit will now have to try and make this rear attack. What I was hoping here is that these phalangites on their own, completely isolated, would be easy to rout, especially with a rear attack. The result was nothing. They didn't rout and they continued fighting there, so that's going to be a huge problem. Now we're exposing our own rear to the enemy, and they're starting to come in with some units here. Levied hoplites once again. Most of their levied hoplites actually attacked a different position. You can see them over here. So that's where they went. They broke through some barricades and are now trying to get into our back lines, but they're not doing a very good job. You can see that while it looks like a lot's happening here, most of their guys are back from the front lines. Only a few guys are actually fighting, and that fight is going to last an extremely long time as a result, so it's a lot more stable than it first appears. So the enemy are starting to all come into my kill zone, and this side of it hasn't even been challenged yet, but we've got a big problem going on over here. This is the cavalry unit of Kashta, Arrakkamani's son, who came in as reinforcements. We only got one unit from his army because our half-dead garrison took up all our unit slots, so we actually have far fewer troops than we should have at the moment. And Kashta was very annoyingly committing suicide on the stakes, as we just saw. I had given him an order to go around to the other side of the town, and through the stakes I guess was the quickest path, so he lost half his men trying to do it, and more are now stuck there once I gave him waypoint orders to go all the way around the outside, and those guys being stuck there will start disrupting the pathfinding AI even more. Very nice. Now in comes the main body of the Seleucids army, their second army most likely here, combining with elements of the first, to hit us hard in the zone we wanted them to come into, but this archer attack doesn't really do anything at all. While there's like 4 units of archers crammed into this building, they don't really put much weight of fire on the enemy. Lots of the archer units are bad, they're garrison units that are just not very effective as we've seen before. Plus many of them aren't firing, so it's not really going to plan, Plus, Kashta, for some reason, once he got to a waypoint on the other side of town, pathfinded back to here to get to the next waypoint, and he died immediately upon hitting the stakes this time. So Arrakkamani's son has been lost to us in this fight. That was not very appreciated at all, and I didn't even realise it was going on until we got the message in the battle itself to say that one of our generals had died. I'm going to have to take control of that unit and give it a much more careful waypoint path to get it where I want to be, by the looks of things. Now, Arrakkamani himself is currently fighting with some companion cav. They're much heavier than all the horsemen we have, so we had a lot of troubles, but eventually I brought them down by making them stand in front of our javelin cav, and they just killed half of them. They're still persistently going after Arrakkamani though, and this is pretty dangerous because we can't really win that fight one-on-one. Luckily we can swarm over them with the chariots and jav cav, and that's going to demoralise those companions and we'll take them down. So our general is still alive out here, but the officer in the town is gone, and so are a lot of the troops. The plan to try and make the enemy stop for a bit so we could try and do things to them didn't work. They just came in with 10 plus heavy infantry units and completely annihilated the 2 or 3 I had in position to stop them. So this really has just failed utterly, and at this point I started evacuating the town. I was already a little bit apprehensive about fighting a town battle against an army that's full of pikemen because of how choke points would work in the enemy's favour. And this just turned my opinion completely. We are going to abandon the town, allow the enemy to take it, which doesn't end the battle because it's only a minor settlement. The battle will continue, and we can forcibly turn it into a field battle by getting as much stuff as we can outside into the open plains outside of the town, where there'll be more room to maneuver and try and exploit the slowness of the Phalanx units. Those archers in the building, by the way, I almost forgot about them. I just about remembered to pull them out right at the end as the enemy was swarming over the area around the building, so they didn't get taken down. I don't know if units actually can go into buildings to fight in melee like they could in, say, Empire Total War. I've never tried it, but we didn't find out in this case anyway. A few units were stuck on the enemy and were forced to stay behind, but everything else is going to come out here and form up for a field battle essentially. And then there was a gigantic wait while the AI just bubbled around in the town, and eventually we come back to the next phase of the fight. Things got started this time with a cavalry attack. They were sending lancers, many of them being generals' units, against our spearmen on our front line, our new front line position. So that was nice of them. And here it looked like they might have wanted to go around to the flank of our men, but they decided not to. They're going to go for the frontal charge, and it's just not going to do all that much. These spear units, these Jewish spears that are actually somewhat armoured compared to our usual troops, are better able to receive such charges. Here some of our generic infantry did get charged and took some losses, but I had so many units nearby I could start folding around to try and trap this heavy cav unit. It almost got away there, but we just touched it on the side and got it into a melee, and then I hit them with the elephants. Not much else to do with them right now, and I just really wanted to take down these cav units. Since we're going to be killing officers in a lot of cases as well, and even if we're not, companion cav are a nice valuable unit to try and get rid of in this early phase of the second part of the battle. Now this general's unit, their commanding general, seemed to discover all of my hidden troops in this group of trees over here, but unfortunately for him, most of these guys have javelins, so suddenly a storm of javs comes down and takes out a lot of the riders, plus going into the forest reduces charge bonus, so his hit doesn't do all that much, and now he's going to be very easy to surround, stuck in that melee. Most of the units, by the way, we're seeing here are from Kashta's army, since Arrakkamani's army has been wiped out. Kashta's army has come on and formed the majority of our forces. Now the plan was to move that front line back to where all those archers are on the left, because that would cause all my hidden units to then be on the flank of the enemy's army. That was the grand strategy. It failed immediately because the enemy attacked with cavalry to start off with, which I didn't really expect, but now we can actually start doing it as the infantry come in, because we're at about the same speed as them, so we can start running away and just drawing them into this big fight where they'll be stuck, unable to outflank us on either side because of the position of the sea and the rest of our army, and we'll just try and get behind them. That was the plan at least. They're going to somewhat foil me by coming in with this half an army's worth of troops over towards my right flanking position, so we're going to be very much delayed by that. At least we did take out their commanding officer here, and he was a really high level general as well, so very nice to have got that achievement done at least. So those units coming in towards our right are going to hit the long line that I quickly formed up with all my ambush troops. I wanted the line to be long and thin so that we'd have as many opportunities as possible to start folding around enemy units. There, some enemies just said nope and refused to engage our deadly two-handed axemen. In other places, the enemy taking their time getting into these fights because these phalanxes are so slow. They're walking almost in slow motion, it seems, as they advance towards us, but they are very strong and almost invulnerable while they're moving around in that tight phalanx formation, so they've got that going for them at least. Now, really, I needed to get a move on because the front line isn't going to hold very long. We've drawn the enemy back into approximately the position I was trying to get them to. Our archers will provide a lot of support and kill a lot of enemies now that they're stuck there, but really it was going to be a big rear attack that did the damage. All our units, though, are distracted because single enemy units are standing in the way, and these Selucid units are pretty good. Like here we have Royal Peltasts. They are technically a Jav unit as Peltasts, but they're actually a sword unit. And a pretty good one at that. They outclass us, so it's going to be a hard fight, but I was hoping that by surrounding them we could demoralise them. The problem is, these Greek-style units are well trained with very high morale, and I'm not sure the defeat of their high-level commander really had any effect. We didn't see any enemy units who were concerned by it or routing because of it, so it's going to be a challenge, essentially. Kashta's cavalry, the survivors of his unit, are taking out some archers, making themselves useful. I wanted to send these elephants in to hit the rear of the enemy's main attacking group, but tragically, this one unit of spears throws a volley of javelins at them from behind. They ran amok, and they ran right back to those spears. And these spears, the Thuros spears, have a bonus fighting against elephants, so these elephants are going to be mostly lost here. That was a devastating blow, actually. I was expecting quite a lot to come from a massive elephant charge into the back of some of those phalanxes. They would have been very vulnerable to a stampede-style attack. So we'll now have to make do without. Still struggling against those Royal Peltasts, even sending in cavalry to charge them to try and demoralise them, not really working out. And our front line is disappearing. You can see I'm kind of moving around and trying to not fight them, but we keep getting stuck in fights because there are so many enemies. So it's caused the front line to become a huge mess, but the enemy aren't exploiting our weaknesses very well. We routed a few enemy units in combat on the extreme left part of the line, and you can see they were all walking off down the beach to escape, and we'll come back to that little move later on. Here some enemy hoplites are still refusing to engage our two-handed axemen. They're just walking up to them and perhaps thinking better of getting too close. So this is pretty good. It's locking the enemy down and making sure they're not doing anything. So it's a nice way to just take them out of the fight, taking out a couple of enemy units with only one of my own. Now I moved my baggage train to go and stand on the route the enemies were taking to escape the battlefield, and as we saw there, with one enemy dying of a heart attack from the shock of finding a horse out here, it's doing a pretty good job of taking down enemy survivors. So what this will mean is, regardless of the outcome of the battle, there will be fewer enemy units that will survive in total, because more of them will have been really depleted by this. So a bit later on, you can see the frontline mess is just getting worse and worse. We've got lots of enemy units who could just go and attack all my skirmishers, but they're not. And unfortunately, the skirmishing fire, even into their flanks, just hasn't done all that much. More mess over here. The number of enemy units is really a problem. We just don't have enough stuff to kite around them and surround individual units, because they outnumber us. They're the ones surrounding us for the most part. Things were going a bit better on our right flank, where I was basically doing what I thought I would be doing along the rest of the front line, getting lots of units to gang up on individual ones and causing routes, and then easily taking out routing troops once they were vulnerable. The two-handed axemen having a great time doing that, of course. We're taking down some levied hoplites really easily there, so that is very nice, but it's not happening fast enough. We're not killing enough of them, and we don't have enough forces left to really make a decisive blow against the rest of the battle line that the enemy have. Arrakkamani almost getting into combat there. You can see I'd ordered him to go and stand near these enemies, but he was desperate to go and fight them. They shuffled out the way by the looks of things. Here's another unit that was totally surrounded but would not leave for a long time. We had to gradually inflict casualties on them, attacking them from the back, where I think Phalanx troops get a debuff while they're in Phalanx formation. against attacks from the flank and back. And eventually they rout, but they won't all rout. Some of them have morale that's so high that even applying virtually every morale penalty you can against them doesn't get the morale low enough for them to leave, especially like the high Paspate troops, the elite hoplites. There's a few around here. We did get rid of some of their royal pelters there using Arrakkamani, although he's now lost virtually all of his bodyguards. And while it looked like our right wing was about to get freed up, the enemy have plenty more units coming in as reinforcements, because they only had their first 2 armies on the field and they've got 4. So that means there's plenty of other units coming in to engage with us, including lots of Jav Cav, who could have been pretty deadly against most of our stuff. I sent 1 unit of Jewish spearmen to just chase them off and basically sacrifice them to make sure they didn't interfere too much. The front line, what's left of it, is now falling. The last men are disappearing under the enemy's pike walls, and it's mostly just skirmishers left we have in this area. I'm trying to shoot arrows into the right flanks of these pike phalanxes because they are weaker on the right, because the shield counts as protecting your front and left when it comes to missile fire at least. Still, not doing all that much damage just because we don't have many archers and they're not very good. And units like these Royal Peltists are fast enough that we can't avoid them with skirmishers. The skirmishers can run away from the front lines of the pike phalanxes all day, but they can't escape from normal units like swordsmen and Thuros spears, Thuros swords that the enemy have a decent number of, plus more and more cavalry starting to come into the picture as well. So I'm actually starting to flee units away from the engagement at this point, and the ones that are already stuck in there are just doomed because the enemy's reinforcements will now start surrounding our men. Their Jav Cav, once out of Javs, come in and function as a pretty decent melee Cav unit, smashing the back of our units. So while we surrounded the enemy in many cases, they are now going to surround us where we just couldn't take down those phalanxes fast enough. Here's another case. That's some of those Herpaspitae units that just don't go down. We killed about half of them fighting them from the back, but they weren't going to leave. And the rest of the line just gone. You can see my units trying to evacuate back to the town now, actually running back to where it started. There's the pile of bodies created by the baggage train. We got a couple of 100 kills actually with the baggage train taking out routing units, so that was nice. My strategy at this point was to run everyone back to the town and try and wait down the timer, because I thought the enemy would glitch out probably trying to get back to us because the pathfinding was messed up. It took them about half an hour to get out of the town. But this doesn't work. We actually lost too much for our army to go on, and the army lost its morale penalty, just routed everything that was left over. So, a close defeat. We lost a lot of troops. We didn't lose Arrakkamani in the battle. He's still alive, and I'm trying to find him here in the aftermath because he was right on the edge of the map as I escaped back to the town. There he is, leading a few surviving members of his cavalry. However, this will still be his last battle because he was part of the army that was in the town. So even though he's not in the town anymore, he counts as being back in the town on the campaign map, and this causes him to die as a result of the town being captured. This cutscene supposedly represents this. We see a pale-skinned man with a giant beard is apparently being revered for his death, but I don't know if that's meant to represent Arrakkamani. It's not too close to his appearance, I must say. So perhaps there is still some hope that some sort of body double was switched in and the real Arrakkamani actually lived on somewhere else. So there he goes. He's going to be annihilated on the campaign map, and the Selucids will take Tyros from us, and that's just the start of what we're losing here, of course. There was a second noble death cutscene, and I wanted to see if it looked any different to the first one, but no, it's the same guy. He went in for a second funeral by the looks of things, and that's supposed to represent Kashta, I presume. It's a valiant defeat. We get an upgraded assessment on the campaign map. We lost most of our staff. Some of Kashta's army, because it was outside the town, is going to get away with this because they just routed at the end and escaped. So they will get away, but everything else is gone. On the enemy's side, some pretty decent damage. We took down a lot of high-ranking officers and did deny them some units, and among the other units we did decent damage as well, and that's only really important because it means they'll have to wait to replenish before they can attack us, so we may have avoided a case where those 4 armies could just come and steamroll loads of other things. What they can do, though, is go right after Kashta's survivors with one of those groups. Now, I considered fighting this one because I thought while it looks pretty bad, we could just dodge a lot of those phalanxes and stay away from them and perhaps take down other units to weaken the enemy. But that last fight took about an hour in real time, because it was a 45-minute battle, and some of it I fought in slow motion, so I was not in the mood for playing some more Total War battle action, so I thought I'll just take the decisive defeat. The enemy will just instantly re-recruit anything I take down anyway, so there's no point trying to maximise their losses here. We'll just lose everything. So we lost both armies and the settlement, and now we're in a really insecure situation overall. They sent an army to take down the fleet I had blockading their trade port, which was pretty cheeky of them, but at least it means we've distracted that army from doing actual work against us, and we might just keep doing that. So that is the end of that. Arrakkamani's journey has come to an end, and the war with the Selucid doesn't look like it's going to go very well if they keep committing to attacking us like that. I actually don't have any more footage of the campaign, that's where I stopped playing, but I might play a little bit more just to see how this war carries on and see what happens. And perhaps Lakumazes, who is now going to have to be king, can turn things around. We will see. Do leave your thoughts in the comments about how much more of the campaign you want to see, etc., because I don't have a strong personal interest in seeing where it goes, because I think it's going to be a grind because of my facetious decision to go to war with the Seleucids. It's not going to be as interesting as I thought. But yes, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in probably at least one more part.